All right, all right. How's everybody doing today? Today is July 3rd, 2025, and we're going to start off a little bit different today. Just a little bit different because a lot of this information is from the previous week and it's dealing with the courts. We are a constitutional republic, and the Constitution has been traded out for courtstitution. And these courts have been way out of pocket for quite some time, and we have to get back to business. We can no longer allow these judges to legislate or play lawfare from the bench. The purpose of the court is to hear a matter and make a judgment on the matter based off of the law set by the Congress, and the executive branch enforces that. These courts have been doing what they want, when they want, how they want, with no checks and balances. They've even, if you make it to the end of the show, you'll see they have even gone as far to ignore the Supreme Court. These lower, inferior courts are out of control. So, as we dive into the forest today, I hope you guys enjoy it. And we're going to start right off out the gate with this detention for Christ. So, 6 Americans were detained on June 27, 2025, this year, on Gangawa Island in South Korea. They were caught trying to launch over 1,600 plastic bottles filled with rice and tiny little Bibles and $1 bills and USB sticks towards North Korea. On these USB sticks, it was Christian information and stuff like that, because we know that in North Korea, they don't allow anything that is not Kim Jong-un or the Un family. So they plan to float these items across the Yellow Sea to North Korea in hopes that they would be able to meet their counterparts on the other side and take this information so they could spread the word of God. However, they were caught. They were caught, and rightfully so, because as you can see here at the base, missionaries make mistake. It is a mistake. It doesn't matter if South Korea is okay with Christianity or any other belief system. You are doing something that could cause potentially a war between two nations that are already in high tensions as it is, but you're pushing a belief, which is fine because God said go out into the world and make disciples. That's fine, but you're doing it in a way that is not fine. You're doing it in a way that could bring harm to others. So I'm not for that. So this isn't a new activist situation with balloons and all the other stuff. They're actually doing things that are banned and banned tactics in this country. Overall, this could cause a lot of diplomatic issues. And President Lee Jae-myung was elected earlier in June, and he halted the over a loudspeaker this and discouraged people from doing this. So these people are in fact in the wrong. Even though they're doing it for Christ, you can do the right thing at the wrong time or in the wrong place, and of course you're wrong. So some of the takeaways from this particular situation here is that the bottle drop stunt raises hard questions. Is it meaningful activism to spread the word of God or reckless interference? And now 6 Americans are caught up in a geopolitical crossfire. And next you'll have to look in to see how North Korea wants to respond to this, because you know they always want to respond. Little Rocket Man is always ready to fire off at any given time. But overall, I think this is something that needs to be put in check and made aware in the United States, that you can't just go to another country and do what you guys are doing, even if it is for God. And if people spent more time praying and asking God how to do what he wants them to do, there'd be less problems, because God's never going to put you in harm's way. It just is what it is. But it's going to take some work. And it seems like for whatever reason, a lot of people from America end up getting caught up in Korea, whether north or south. So hopefully this turns out for the betterment of these people, and they learn a valuable lesson not to do what they've done. It just is what it is. But in other news, we have a checkmate on the lower courts. So late last week, the Supreme Court issued a major ruling in the Trump v. Casa case. And now I have spoken on this before over the past few days, but a lot of people aren't really catching on as to what's going on. So President Trump's executive order that was aimed at birthright citizenship, not to take it away, but to actually make clarification on the matter that you can't just move into this country, pop out a baby, and because that baby's born here, you get to stay here as well. They used to call it anchor babies. But through activism and activist judges and left-leaning liberal individuals, they have for decades perpetuated this ideology. And the Trump v. Casa hearing gave a big up to Trump in trying to put a halt to that. It did not make it to where he could actively remove the 14th Amendment or people's understanding of the first clause in the 14th Amendment, because they understand it wrong. They don't actually read to read, they read to feel. So this does give him a big up in this particular situation, but it doesn't actually give him the go-ahead nod to do this. So one of the key takeaways from this particular case that was ruled 6-3 in their decision, and they said that the authority is overall not going to be the way it has been. And earlier I started out with the court institution that we've been dealing with. The courts have been ruling and reigning in a manner that is actually unconstitutional because the lower inferior courts don't have the authority to jump over the Supreme Court and go straight to the executive branch and say, hey, we're going to do this. But this particular case took the power away from the lower courts to do nationwide injunctions. And that's a beautiful thing. So what the Supreme Court ended up doing is they told them that they need to actually issue these injunctions with a plaintiff, and that you have to have someone backing this instead of you just doing it out of a whim or what you feel the Constitution states. So the implications for Trump's executive order, this ruling lifts broad blocks on his executive order 14-160, opening the door, like I said earlier, for a piecemeal enforcement that would allow him to, not be beaten back by lawfare, because that's exactly what's going on. These lawsuits are piling up, and they're piling up, and they're piling up, and Trump is having to fight a battle on two fronts. So the decision sharply limits a powerful judicial tool that the courts have been using over the years and over the decades to essentially neuter any president they see fit. However, a good little caveat here, did you know Bush, Obama, and Biden combined don't have as many injunctions as Trump does? Just this term alone, they have completely tried to use the courtroom or the bench, as these judges do, to stop him from doing what he wants to do. And it's crazy. But the bottom line and the next steps is that this verdict doesn't settle whether ending birthright citizenship is unconstitutional or constitutional, but it does clear the way on the battlefield for Trump to actually set things up and hopefully have the Supreme Court actually hear this in the coming weeks to coming months, because they just ended their session. But hopefully we don't have this spark back up. But it's crazy because the last segment I have today actually shows how it can spark back up. And I want you guys to be able to pay attention to that. So sit tight and make sure you pay attention. In our next segment here, Trump trade talks termination. So the U.S.-Canada trade standoff continues. President Trump's announced that on social media that he is terminating all trade talks with Canada, effective immediately, citing that the new Canadian digital service tax is egregious. And Trump likes to use these wild words and these big words that he may not even understand, but he used it in the right context here. So Canada's recent implementation of a 3% digital tax on big tech firms like Amazon, Apple, and Google are projected to generate over $2 billion annually from U.S. companies. And Trump's just like, whoa, wait a minute. You're increasing taxes specifically on American companies digitally? So that's actually going to affect those companies, which would ultimately affect the people that live here, because those companies, to make up shortfall, are going to raise prices as they always do. Now, Trump did warn that the U.S. tariffs on the Canadian goods would follow within a week, and hopefully he's using this as a tactic to put a stranglehold on them and get them back in line. He has used tariffs effectively as a playing card that is always always a win. It's almost like playing Uno and dropping that draw 4 as your last card, and you get a W. So Canada, led by Prime Minister Mark Carney, is sticking to the table, saying that the negotiations will continue in the best interests of Canadians. Business leaders are urging Canada to drop the tax and restore momentum. So both people in Canada and in the United States are like, hey, this is only going to hurt you. You should stop so we can, get back right. Overall, I don't see this tug of war stopping anytime soon until Trump tries to crush them like he did with China. And he's being more benevolent than ever, because for the simple fact that they need us more than we need them, and they are a good trade partner. They just happen to be throwing a tantrum right now. But bravo to Trump for sticking to his guns and holding his foot on the pedal. And I hope he continues to do so that we can ultimately come to a amends between the two nations and get things back to the way they're supposed to be. It is what it is. If they don't, good luck, Canada. In our next segment here, we have campaign finance back in the news. So before the Supreme Court ended their session until the next coming months, they are saying that they're going to go back and look at campaign finance. So they're going to take a major stance in looking into this to see if things that are going on are actually constitutional. So the court agreed earlier this week, or last week rather, to review a challenge to the federal limits on coordinated spending by political parties, which a law that's been in place for about 50 years might be overturned, as it should be, because we got to get the money out of politics. This is not the way they originally intended it. And we having social media now, and anybody can get on a free platform to promote themselves, should be able to do it that way. No more this big news media and asking people for donations to do this or do that. Do it on your own dime. So the Republican-led group by the NRSC and the NRCC and figures like Ted Cruz and Vance argue these limits violate the First Amendment, comparing that the restrictions to a coach-quarterback separation. So a little bit of context for you. This isn't the first big court move, or a landmark ruling for Citizens United that happened back in 2010, and the McClutchian, I think that's how you say it, in 2014, already loosened restrictions on corporate spending and donation caps. I think we should just completely neuter them altogether. Why are corporations able to donate into our elections? Because ultimately, you're a corporation. You're going to benefit from the government regardless, because the government needs you to keep running so that the money keeps flowing. And they're taxing the hell out of you anyway, so what does it matter? Stop trying to get a quid pro quo going so that you get benefits, and it only hurts us, the people. So why this matters in this decision, which is expected before 2026 term, could reshape party candidate coordination and potentially shifting money from super PACs back to the parties. While critics warn everybody that this could fuel a partisan spending issue, I'm not worried about it. Critics say a lot of stupid stuff. They think things are good when they're not, and they think things are bad when they're not. So who cares? So in closing on this particular segment, big money on deck for democracy, for the democracy game. That's basically what it is. And we're not a democracy. We're a constitutional republic. So we need to get back to the basics as our country was founded on, and stop playing these games with everybody's pocket, because ultimately it affects us, the people, under this bannership. So take that for what you will. I'm not with it one way or another, but it gets worse. It gets worse. So this particular segment here is called "Healthcare is Fraud," and it is. It is. Like I understand the socialists want to have this big free healthcare, but you can't do free stuff. Free never works out, and there's nothing on this planet that's free, unless you like slaves. Take that how you will. But the Justice Department and allied agencies charged 324 defendants, including 96 medical professionals, in a coordinated nationwide crackdown involving over 14.6 billion in alleged fraudulent health care claims. Yeah, they're playing games with your health. More than double the previous record. That's crazy. That's crazy. So the scheme is being exposed from top to bottom. Operation Gold Rush is what they called it, is a transitional network filled approximately with 10.6 billion in fraudulent Medicare claims for medical equipment, exploiting stolen identities over 1 million Americans. So when you get that bill for that place you never went to and you're wondering what's going on, and then they're telling you they can't do anything about it, yeah, that's a part of that. So prescriptions, opioid trafficking, and all of this is what's in this little bust that they did. So 74 defendants, including doctors and pharmacists, were tied to schemes diverting over 15 million opioid pills. Didn't we have this issue in 2001 where there was opioid epidemic? What is going on? Why are we back to doing this? Why are we dealing legal drugs across the world and across the United States? What is going on? Why are we going back to this? So it's ridiculous. They have 1.17 billion in fake telehealth and testing claims. They're getting this money from you guys. They're doing fraudulent things under people's names to make money, and we, the people, get stuck with the bill. So they're seizing assets and saving real authorities up to 245 million in cash, luxury vehicles, crypto, and houses, and all of this stuff. That's what they've been doing with this money that they've been stealing from people. You should be pissed off about this. You should be pissed off about it, because it gets worse, because it's not just here. Like I said, it's all over the world. They're doing this globally. The scheme has crossed borders from Russia to Pakistan to Estonia, all over. And it's revealing how sophisticated this whole system is, really and truly, and how it's affecting the world. It's not just here. They're doing this everywhere. America and their doctors and their pharmacy companies are doing this everywhere just to get a little kickback. So the DOJ emphasizes its fight on their hands for integrity of healthcare. Because if we, the people, can't believe in our healthcare system, which a lot don't, because, it's all about the money for them, what can we really believe in? And why would I want to go get healthcare from a place that's just going to steal out of my pocket? And being that this is the largest takedown of fraudulent healthcare claims within the United States, it should be noted that we should pay more attention to this. Otherwise, they're going to just keep doing it. And it's crazier still that this didn't get exposed until Trump got back in office. They've been doing this for years. As I stated earlier, it's over double of what it used to be. So they've been doing this year after year after year, and now they're just really pedal to the metal. But when you get your head too big and you start doing things that you shouldn't be doing in excess, you get caught. And rightfully so. The healthcare system is trash. It's trash. It's all about the money. Nurses don't get to do nursing anymore. It's paperwork. Paramedics don't get to do what paramedics do anymore. It's paperwork. Something to think about. It really is. But still on the track of money, we have the Federal Reserve being eyed by Trump. Now, it's not any mystery that Trump and the current Fed chair, Jerome Powell, have butted heads. Now, Jerome Powell was put in this position under Trump's first administration, and they worked very, very well together. Jerome Powell lasted through the Biden administration and came out on the other side a different man. So Trump has been ramping up pressure on Jerome Powell and calling him terrible and attacking his cautious approach to what Trump wants done. He's floated the idea of actually appointing a successor earlier this year, and he wants to do it as early as this summer or by the fall. And it seems like Trump is stacking the deck with people that ally with him, as he should. Anybody that has someone that's against them isn't for what their agenda is. And being that Trump's ultimate agenda is America first, we need people that aren't going to tiptoe around things and do the things that all these people that have been being let go are doing, because they're actually hurting the movement. We already see that the courts are doing this enough. So Trump is actually looking at several people here. The former Fed governor, Kevin Warsh, it's literally Warsh. I'm not saying Wash wrong. His last name is Warsh. The NEC head, Nick Hassett, the Treasury Secretary, Scott Bessent, and the current Fed governor, Christopher Waller, and the ex-World Bank chief, David Malpass, are the ones that Trump is actually looking to replace Mr. Powell with. And I think we need to look into this in the situation that you can't be too reserved when big moves are being made, because that's like having a club foot. You're trying to take a big step and the club foot just drags behind you. And we need everybody on board for the movements that we're having in this country. So the news of the potential early announcement has triggered a weaker dollar. So I'm going to give you some statistics here. And falling treasury yields. The 10-year yield dipped from 0.02 to 4.26. I know that seems like it's going up, but that's a bad thing when it goes up. And the dollar has slid from 11%, slid by 11% from year to date, from last year to this year. It's dropped 11%. Investors are now pricing in more dovish federal policies under Trump's preferred candidates. And it's just, man, it's so many little ins and outs that are happening right now that a lot of people don't understand, and they don't even really talk about. They throw out a headline and give you a cute little blurb, and they don't actually even explain this stuff to you. So some people are saying that this is a shadow chair strategy, that Trump's camp is trying to install a new Fed chair to designate early, or designate essentially a shadow chair ahead of Powell's term. So he's trying to get rid of him before Powell's out. But Powell has been pretty opposite of what Trump has wanted to do this whole time. And everything Powell has said was going to happen hasn't. Trump has beat all the odds. If you're watching the stock market, Trump has beat all the odds. If you're watching our treasury bonds yields, Trump has beat all those. They said those things were going to mature under Trump's term this time around, and he's going to be stuck with the bill. That's not happening. We got countries buying new debt and all of this stuff, and it's actually working out. Heck, I even spoke on a couple of weeks ago how the United States bought back some of its own debt. That is not something that has been happening under any other president. So what's really going on? So the federal independence is basically at risk, is what they're saying. And a lot of critics are saying, oh, Trump is going to do this so he can set himself up as king. You guys are stupid. Yeah, you're stupid. And I think you should stop being stupid and actually pay attention to what's really going on and not what you feel should be going on. And let Trump do what he's doing. And if he does get out of pocket and out of hand, then you could check him. Nothing Trump has done right now to date is unconstitutional or bad for the United States. And that's including the bombing in Iran. Even though I'm against that personally, it's still a benefit to the United States. So, our next segment here. Oh, boy. Classrooms, not a battlefield or battleground for culture wars. Parents just took the wheel back from schools and activism last week when the Supreme Court handed down a major win for parents across the country, ruling that the families have the right to opt out of any LGBTQ-themed curriculum in public schools, that is. In a time where its state-run education has increasingly pushed progressive values and ruling marks that shape a curriculum that was opposite of what it should be, meaning that, hey, you're supposed to be teaching my kid how to read, write, and do math and social studies and civics and all this other stuff, not reading to them about sexuality. Yeah. So the case that changed the game was another 6-3 decision by the Supreme Court, and they sided with the Maryland parents in Mahmoud versus Taylor, who argued that forcing these children to participate in LGBTQ-focused lessons violated their religious beliefs. And it wasn't just Christians, the Muslims too. And I know you guys love to jump all over the Christians and talk down to the Christians, but you won't do that to the Muslims because you know they will throw your butt off a building or stone you or chop your head off, even in America. So Justice Alito emphasized that the government has no right to coerce families into accepting controversial ideologies, especially in matters of faith or morality. This is the whole separation of church and state. Not that you separate the church from the state, but the state needs to be separated from the church, meaning that someone like a Christian can go get in the state in a position and do what they do. However, the state can't tell the church what to do, and the state can't tell the people what to do. It doesn't work like that. So anytime that you have the federal government or state government telling you what you can and can't do as the people, as long as you're not violating constitutionality yourself, they're out of order. They're out of order. This is why the 10th Amendment is written the way it is. Now, the ruling itself does not ban books, because you know we had that whole slew of banning books from the left and the right back in the day. It's not doing that, but it is pushing to where parents have choice. Now, the members of the LGBT have been bonkers over this. I've been seeing videos all over social media about people crying about, why are you able to take this away from my child? It ain't that. It ain't what you think it is. It just like you don't want religion forced on your kids, we don't want anything that's antithetical to the way we believe forced on our kids. So let's keep it cute and let our kids learn what they need to learn and not what you think they should learn. Because there's nowhere in history that knowing what someone does behind closed doors has ever determined anything in history. It might have gotten people unalived, as they say on TikTok, or killed in the real world. It might have gotten people killed, but it does not actually affect any portion of reality. Who you want to sleep with is who you want to sleep with. I don't care. Just don't tell me about it, and don't tell my kids. That's ultimately what it is, because it's sexuality. It's not actually anything of real consequence. So keep your sexuality to yourself, and we can keep it moving. Yeah. Got to keep it moving. So this right here, this story right here is overlooked heavily. It's overlooked heavily. And there's a lot of people that don't understand what's going on here. But I'm going to break it down for you. And TPS stands for temporary protection status. So it is not forever. It's not. Trump's bold move to restore integrity and immigration and ending TPS for roughly about 500,000 Haitian nationals is underway. And as it should be. You know, when Haiti gets beat up by hurricanes and or war and stuff like that, these people can come here temporarily to escape that. And then when things quelch, or calm rather, they can go back. They can go back to where they're coming from. Trump's wanting this to be the thing. So, restoring rule of law is basically what's happening here. So on June 27th, the DHS under Trump's administration announced that Haitians' temporary status of protection would officially expire August 3rd, with deportation starting September 2nd. And this follows a broader push in revoking temporary status for Venezuelans, Afghans, and all the other ones that, you know, have been let in to stay here for years. And I know, hearing what the other side would say, but they've had a life here and they did this here. Who cares? Go back to your country. Your country's safer now. Go back to your country. You should have not come here with the mindset of planning routes. And if you did come here with that mindset because you got this TPS, you should have done what was necessary to become a citizen whilst here. Some of these people have been here 10, 15 years and was just allowed to stay here. So the policy perspective of this TPS situation and them being kicked back to their country is to protect our sovereignty. So the conservatives have been applauding this move as a stand for national sovereignty and legal consistency. The DHS has argued conditions in Haiti have improved enough to warrant that their TPS status can be revoked. In other words, the program isn't a catch-all safety valve. So they don't just come here and just get to stay and live here all happy, honky-dory because things are better here. Go make your country better. Now, I understand hurricanes and all this other stuff because that's normally what happens with Haiti. Hurricanes hit and they get to come here. Lastly, it was because of barbecue, that rogue leader that was breaking people out of prison and allowing them to attack people. But hurricanes come. I'm all for helping them. But I'm not all for helping them to come here and stay here. So in Haiti, that gang violence has been quelched, and a lot of money has been pumped into Haiti to help them recover through U.S. aid and other means. So let's stop playing games here, please. Let's get back to normalcy and get back to building America up and being America first in this situation. I know it looks sad and bleak for these people, but these people are hardy people. They can recover and rebuild. Actually, if anything, they just need to fix their government, really and truly. That way, you don't have to come here when bad things happen. You can fix it because you're in control of yourselves. So here is a follow-up story. I've done several. Played a few weeks back, Trump saying at his State of the Union address, well, actually, it was a couple of months back, where he stated that he wanted to build more ships. So America is racing China to sea in this follow-up. So a ultimate move has been made by the Pentagon to deliver $5 billion in contracts to accelerate the U.S. Navy shipbuilding. This is beautiful. The Defense Logistics Agency in the Mechanicsburg just awarded an indefinite delivery / indefinite quantity contract worth $5 billion to 6 firms, including Supply Corps, Atlantic Diving, Supply, Coleman International, and ASRC Federal, and several other companies to get these things moving. And they're willing to increase it to a total of $10 billion overall so we can get more ships. Mind you, we have a Navy that is very, very strong, very, very powerful, but we don't have the ships to facilitate a full-scale ocean battle. We don't. China dwarfs our ships in every way, shape, and form right now because we've been so lax. It ultimately, why it matters is that our Navy shipyards are historically slow, and the ships are aging, and some are over 100 years old. And this contract will streamline a procurement in the coming weeks and months that will lead to getting better, bigger ships that will ultimately be able to stand against the test of time and against the enemy if we engage in, sea battles, as essentially put. And it's sad to see that our military, even though people gripe and moan, they got too much money. Did you know that we're spending majority of our military budget in helping other countries? Kind of like the whole situation with the Houthi over in the Middle East, where they were shooting rockets at any cargo ships, and so America had to go over there amongst other countries to try to shut that down. That's where that budget is going to. It's not going to making our military better. So the ultimate goal here is to create more Virginia-class first attack submarines, destroyers, carriers, and unmanned vessels. That's what we need to be doing, because in this tech and modernization world we live in, we're seeing more and more innovation coming along to make ships faster and better. They're even using 3D printing. and not your typical 3D printing. They're using high-end 3D printing that does metal work. And this will help push out ships faster. And it will essentially create a warp speed for warships, as it were. The budget is going to be nearly $1 billion to modernize all the ancient dry docks and the facilities out of this 5 to 10 billion that they're giving. So I'm here for this. I'm here for making our military stronger. I'm here for making our military better. And I'm just here not to be weak anymore. We've been weak for far too long. We have not had a commander-in-chief that has put in the work and put in the effort to overcome the shortfalls. We've just had a bunch of people in Congress lacing their pockets with all the money they possibly can with insider trading and lobbying deals and backbiting and sharing secrets and stuff. We need to get this under check. And Trump is actually streamlining this process to make it easier for America to succeed and be America first. So in another segment I have here, guys, to move away from the monotony of the Supreme Court and the military, porn is a disease. Law and Order Online, the Supreme Court is upholding Texas common sense law that requires age verification for all pornographic websites. Now, the premise of this law is basically to make it to where it's harder for children to access this stuff, because we know that porn is damaging, and really and truly it should be done away with altogether. But that's a hard task to take on, especially when you have Jews, imposter Jews, that is, owning places like Pornhub. It's a little bit more difficult to take that on. But it does need to be done, and hopefully it unrolls this tidal wave where it rolls across the entire country, where all states set an 18 years or older verification. And I know in North Carolina alone, we've done that here. And they don't just let you get to type in a few numbers and stuff like that to skip through and you're now in to watch all the nasty lasciviousness that's going on. You actually have to give your ID. And I'm pretty sure Texas is the same way. You actually have to give your ID to be able to access this crap. So SCOTUS backs parental protection with this in another 6-3 ruling. This seems to be a going rate here. There's always 3 judges that are against truth and honesty and goodness in this nation. But it's in another 6-3 ruling, the Free Speech Coalition versus Paxton. The court sided with Texas, saying that, hey, this is your ability to control yourselves and police yourselves. There's no rule, regulation, amendment, or anything that says that the states can't put a stranglehold on corporations and companies or allowing these things in their states. If they don't want it, they don't want it. And what is so wrong with making age verification? I don't understand it. This is really a common sense regulation. And it's not actually censorship, because they're saying, hey, you can still access this stuff as an adult. Because kids are accessing things and seeing things that is essentially raping their minds. And now they have this false ideology of what it is to be with someone because they're watching something that they weren't intended to. And they go and try to recreate this action, never knowing what true intimacy is. All because they're essentially regurgitating something they've seen. So bravo, Texas. Bravo, Texas. A lot of people are against this are screaming, oh, well, this goes against privacy, and this does this, and this does this, and we can just use VPNs to do this. Then do it. If you want to expose your kids to this crap, do it. But overall, the state should have the ability and power, as the 10th Amendment says so, to do this. And what's wrong with that? What's wrong with protecting your kids? Are you guys that much of sycophants that you're okay with letting your kids do this? I'm not. Just food for thought. Food for thought. But you know what's not food for thought? This right here. The big, beautiful bill has passed with flying colors, y'all. And this is unprecedented. It usually there's some ping pong back and forth between the Senate and the House, but They thought this was going to be a few months down the road before this actually passed, and it passed. It's crazy. It passed quickly, and I'm here for it. So the one big, beautiful bill bulldozed its way through Congress and lands on President Trump's desk tomorrow on July 4th. How much you want to bet that that's going to be televised? This is a massive win for the country, not just Republicans or conservatives. It's for the country. Democrats, you live here too. Liberals, you live here too. This is going to benefit you also. So to give you a little bit of information about this is going to be tax cut for the people with 100% tax free on tips. This is going to give you a child tax credit that is increased by 25%. It's going to have standard deductions up to 20% for families. Oh, but Trump's only doing this for the millionaires and billionaires. It's because you didn't read the bill. You're stupid. So this is also going to extend the Trump-era taxes through 2032. His tax plan that he implemented that the Biden administration neutered by doing the Inflation Reduction Act that was tie-broken by Kamala Harris, or the Save America Act, which actually increased taxes. But we're under Trump's tax plan. Yeah, you are. But they're doing things that would subvert that. Ultimately, this means more money in your pocket and less in the swamp. Yeah. You get to keep your money. I like it. I love it. And I want some more of it. So it also is securing a $48 billion payout towards border security and immigration enforcement. I'm reminded of SB 1444 that Joseph Robinette Biden said was going to be a bipartisan bill coming out of the Senate. By the way, you can't have a fundraising or revenue-raising bill come out of the Senate, only the House of Representatives. So that was unconstitutional on its face. And by the way, Trump didn't call and cancel that because the Democrats had control over the Senate at the time. And that was a $118.6 billion bill that gave more money to everybody else and their mama than our actual border. If you broke the bill down all in all, it was only going to give $880 million to our border. And most of that was going to go to the judges and the lawyers. What do these people need lawyers for? You're coming here illegally. You don't need a lawyer. You can get your whole habeas corpus, talk to the judge, and get the heck out. Just the same way you walked over here, you can walk back. And another thing, as my friend AJ always talks about, is how are you walking all of these miles and you're still fat? I'm not fat shaming, but how are you still fat? If it's taking you weeks and months to walk all the way up South America, and those that are flying over from their countries into South America and walking up, how are you still fat? I've lost 20 pounds in like 2 weeks just because it's hot outside, and you're walking this far? Let's continue. I don't want to get stuck on that. There's 12,000 plus new agents and officers with this bill that will go towards the border. That's something that you Democrats wanted, more agents and people at the border, right? You're getting it. And the border wall expansion resumes immediately with this bill. America's back in control of its border, and that's what we need. All of these other Democrats and Republicans of the past and congressmen and women of the past have played games with border protection. They've used it as meat to dangle in front of people to get more money for themselves. So while you're focused on the meat, they're taking money out of your pocket. Oh, we need this money for border security, but really that money was just going to your pocket. That's ultimately what was happening. So they're also cutting welfare bloat, and enrollment expectations enrollment is expected to drop 15 to 20%. There's a lot of people on welfare that don't need to be. If you're able-bodied, get off your butt and go work. I'm here for it. Food stamp eligibility has narrowed. It's going to be narrowed down by 13% with this bill, helping the true people that are in need, not the freeloaders that are getting stuff just to get it. Real quick story. When I first started out in the world as an adult, I lived in income-based housing. And living in income-based housing, you had to qualify, which I did because I only made like $1,600 a month at the time, working as a fresh person out of college. And I had someone that lived across the hall from me. And these were nice apartments. And the husband was a trucker, but he didn't live there because if he did, they wouldn't have qualified. But the woman got food stamps. She got reduced rent. She had free eye, free dental, and all of this stuff. And if you totaled it all up, she was bringing home $9,400 a month with all of this free stuff. Whilst her husband, who was a trucker, making like $80,000 a year, was just funneling her money whenever she needed it. They were essentially beating the system. Now, the deficit with this bill, yeah, I know, everybody likes to talk about the deficit. We'll add anywhere from 2.4 to 3.4 trillion over 10 years, which is nice because it's over a long time. It's not over an immediate time. It is going to ultimately help the people. And there ain't a single president that hasn't added to the deficit. Even, Bill Clinton added to the deficit. He balanced the budget, kind of, but he added to the deficit. So the GDP growth is projected to grow about 2.8% annually, which would ultimately help out overall, help the government more than it'll help us, but it'll help out so they're not digging in our pockets. So you're having short-term debt for long-term dominance. In closing on this particular segment, guys, this isn't just a bill, it's a course correction. Less government, more freedom, fewer excuses, and American people and America is building itself up again. I'm here for it. It's a beautiful thing. It's a big, beautiful bill. In our next segment here, right here, I'm going to play this video first for you guys so you can have some understanding of what I'm going to be talking about. And I'll cut it midway. It's a long video. I won't play the whole thing, but I want you guys to take a listen to this.
Justice Samuel Leto dissenting from the Supreme Court ruling blocking deportations of suspected Venezuelan gang members, saying, quote, in sum, literally in the middle of the night, the court issued unprecedented and legally questionable relief without giving the lower courts a chance to rule. This is why the White House releases rap sheets, photos of TDA members it wants to deport. Here to react is George Washington law professor and Fox News contributor Jonathan Turley. Professor, thank you so much for joining us this morning.
Thanks,
one of
Charlie.
the things that us non-lawyers who get confused about a lot of this stuff often sort of wonder about is the process. Sometimes judges are defending a process and that doesn't make sense to us, and so you have to take a second breath. But this is a case where Justice Alito took a torpedo to the actual process of what his colleagues were doing. And to me, that's very unsettling as somebody who loves the law, wants us to protect the law, but also doesn't understand what the heck is going on here.
Well, Charlie, you get a sense of the frustration that a number of the members of the court are experiencing with this torrent of emergency appeals. And what Justice Alito is saying is, we need to get back to regular order because these cases are coming to us without a record. We don't know what the position of lower courts are. It's basically an improvisational type of filing. And Alito is basically saying, I'm having enough of this. The court earlier basically, chastised lower courts. There's a strong suggestion that they were allowing forum shopping. They sent one case out of D.C. and said that Judge Bosberg, who's currently considering a contempt charge, should never have even heard that case, which is what a number of us said at the outset, that he should never have accepted a case that was actually a habeas case belonging down south. So I think you see this level of frustration rising with the justices. I expect that what we're going to be seeing here is an effort of the court to create better guideposts for lower courts. We just had a Fourth Circuit decision where a conservative judge, Judge Wilkinson, said we need mutual respect between the judiciary and executive branches. I think the Supreme Court's going to pick up on that theme and say everyone needs to de-escalate and get back to regular order.
Yes, let's get back to regular order. Let's get back to you doing what you're supposed to be doing. Because what you're doing right now ain't it. You're taking liberties with these loopholes and have been for years to shut down things that you don't like from the bench. It is not your duty, not your job, as I stated at the very beginning of this podcast, to do what you're doing. You are here to serve. That's it. Nothing more, nothing less. And you guys are way out of pocket because what you're doing is ultimately getting your points across by telling people what they can and can't do. And that's not what the duty of a judge is. It's not. And it's time that you get put in your place like a toddler in the corner. Now, I didn't know this before this, but the Supreme Court for a long time has been telling these inferior courts, yes, inferior, Article 1, Section 9, and Section 10 of the Constitution calls them inferior. These inferior courts have been doing this for decades. This is not new, but it wasn't at the frequency it was or is now then. Now it's every single day they're just doing this. And Justice Alito has basically flagged a potential loophole, even through universal injunctions, that they're going to be able to do this, that they're going to find a way to do this still, and Trump won't be able to get things crossed because they're going to find a way around it, meaning that they're not following the order of the Supreme Court, which is the authority is delegated to the Supreme Court by the Congress and has been for a long time. No new amendments to the Constitution has been made. So these lower courts are acting as if they are the court. And it's not, more so the judges of these lower courts. Now, mind you, these people are not voted on. They're appointed. They're appointed. So he cautions that the courts don't just rubber band stamp everything under the class relief portion of the Rule 23, that they need to be thorough or the universal injunctions might sneak back in. So he's telling them, hey, you actually need to do your job according to the Constitution and according to the rules, policies, and procedures that are set forth by Congress and by the Supreme Court, that you need to follow the rules because you're not doing that. And as federal judges adapt to this new ruling from above from the Supreme Court, like using the APA challenges or state-led cases, meaning that the state brings it to them and then they go forward with that as they're supposed to, and it always has been that being the case, that you guys got to stay on track with that. Otherwise, there's going to be a real impact that the Supreme Court is going to be bogged down with having to fight all this crap back. Majority of the things that the Supreme Court has been dealing with are these injunctions. They're not even able to hear real cases because their caseload is basically being bogged down because Trump needs to be able to make actions. So these people are using all of these nationwide universal injunctions to slow down the process of the Supreme Court hearing other more important cases just so they can stop Trump. This is why you've been seeing the Supreme Court give ruling after ruling after ruling in favor of everything that Trump is doing, saying, hey, it's not unconstitutional. Sit down, shut up. Sit down, shut up. Sit down, shut up. But these courts just continue to do what they're doing. They continue to do what they're doing. And this is a segment that the picture I was going to use. I should have put it up earlier, but I digress. I got on my soapbox. I apologize. But this is what's happening. You have these weak, inferior individuals that are activist judges doing the things that they're doing from their position instead of actually going through the process as it's supposed to be outlined in Rule 23 and other rules. They have all these rules and regulations that they're supposed to abide by, and they haven't been. So hopefully we can just get a handle on this, and hopefully they keep an eye out for this so that these judges don't find more loopholes, because I'm tired of it. I've been tired of it for a long time. Guys, it is always a pleasure. And in closing today, we're going to talk a little bit about Christian liberty and their protections. This is a fight to maintain the freedom of worship and conscience. Like education, healthcare, and businesses all are laid out, they're all separated in one way or another. And you can't stop people from doing what they do within each of those realms. However, you can't tell them who they can and can't worship either. So our verse today comes from Acts 5, 27 through 28. Or no, it's 27. 28. Saying, did we not strictly command you? This is the Pharisees talking and the high priest talking to the disciples. Saying, did we not strictly command you that you should not teach in the name of Jesus? And behold, you have filled Jerusalem with your doctrine and intend to bring this man's blood upon us. Because this was around the time that they killed Jesus, and that they were basically saying, hey, you did this. In verse 29, Peter answered them with the other apostles and said, we ought to obey God rather than man. So as your days come forward, learn to obey God and not man. Just like these courts are supposed to obey the law, we too are supposed to obey the law over the rules and regulations of man. Guys, thank you for joining me. As always, it's a pleasure, and I hope you enjoyed the show today. But overall, make sure you're not the one missing the forest for the trees. Have a good one.